You guys are just too much. Just too much. Oh my goodness. I am not singing a Poe song, although um, I did see one on a Facebook reel today. It was the Raven. I can't remember. No, I absolutely know what the rumor online is. I saw it on my Facebook. Was tagged in it by the fox himself. So I tried to go a little wide with stuff tonight because I figured we needed our giant raven. And I love my new set of tarot cards and I have my candles for my people who love me. Um, I also, and I completely forgot until like 45 minutes ago, I was going to get, um, but I was going to get either a slice or like a Little Debbie brand or whatever cherry pie because yesterday, so Monday was Poe's birthday. Yesterday was David Lynch's birthday. And I missed it. But we're here tonight. And yes, I was going to absolutely get a piece of cherry pie. I'm going to need to hear a song. um, mm-hmm. Well, Matt, I'm sorry. I would love for you to give me a like, but I don't know any Poe songs. I don't know. Maybe one will come to me. Maybe one will come to me. Or if there's anyone who can find a Poe song, go ahead and put it in the chat and we'll see if we can play it. I don't know how to make that work. Jax, no songs. Make one up. I am not the songwriter in this group. I'm just not. There is a songwriter in here, and if he's going to post that I'm going to sing, I guess he has to write a song in the next however long. Hi, Heidi. Oh, there was another one. It was the Telltale Heart, but yeah. Doggone it. I'm going to find it. And I will share it on my Facebook and I may put a link in the description here. I don't know, but I'm going to find it. Anyway, it is Wednesday and we're here together again. This is, I'd have to go back and count how many videos we have because that's how many weeks we've done. And I don't think we've missed one. Even when we were having computer problems, I don't think we missed one. I think we just recorded it and then posted it. So thank you, you guys. I am having such a blast. And I keep playing with stuff and I know it looks slightly different every week, but yeah, I'm having so much fun building this and I am so grateful that you guys are here with me. And it is a million degrees in this bedroom and I'm not sure why. So if you see me fanning myself, that is why. Because as soon as I open the door, the sound is going to change. So, anywho's'll what is going on these days? Oh, so I have a shirt. You can buy a shirt with my face on it. It's the Monster Series Final Girl with Forever Entertainment. I'll put a link in here too. I don't know if anybody, except for Heidi, who is connected with that group, is watching right now. But if you are, hello, thank you guys so much. You can buy a mug or a t-shirt with my face on it. It is super scary and I love it. And I think there's going to be a Valentine's line that may also have my face on it. I don't know. But I'm super excited. I'm going to be getting a coupon code for you guys soon. So I will put all of that all over everything as we do. But before we talk about tonight's story, if you have not subscribed to the channel yet, please do so. We are sitting right at 78. So a little bit behind our goal, but doesn't change the goal. I still would like to, at 500, we can start playing a little bit more with YouTube. And I will have, I don't know, I guess I'll just be able to do, there's one I remember from my folksy music days. Ooh, Dad. Ooh. Okay, if you can remember it, maybe I'll try to figure out how to bring you on, and you can sing us a little song before we go tonight. But yeah, I'll have access to a lot more stuff, playing, maybe even starting to make some money with this thing. So I will try to keep from running ads because I pay. No. Yes. So I'm going to try to keep away from ads. If we can do some sponsorship deals, I don't mind thanking people for helping out with particular episodes or whatever's. So yeah, I'm just going to jump in because, again, I'm rambling, and I've been rambling for nearly 7 minutes. I have a delicious Cabs In for tonight. I did not find the Amontillado, but to be fair, I did not look. So with that, we are going to read Murders in the Rue Morgue. This may take us 2 nights. I have a feeling it probably will. But we'll see how we go. Yeah. If you guys have news, put it in the chat. I want to share and celebrate with you guys. Yeah, like I say, I think this is going to be the year for a lot of us. So tell me the good things that are happening for you. And I'll be checking in. The mental features discoursed as of the analytical are in themselves but little susceptible of analysis. We appreciate them only in their efforts. We know of them, among other things, that they are always to their possessor, when inordinately possessed, a source of the liveliest enjoyment. As the strong man exults in his physical ability, delighting in such exercises as call his muscles into action, so glories the analyst in that moral activity which disentangles. He derives pleasure from even the most trivial occupations, bringing his talent into play. He is fond of enigmas, of conundrums, of hieroglyphics, exhibiting in his solutions of such a degree of acumen which appears to the ordinary apprehension preternatural. His results, brought about by the very soul and essence of method, have in truth the whole air of intuition. The faculty of resolution is possibly much invigorated by mathematical study, and especially by that highest branch of it which unjustly, and merely on account of its retrograde operations, has been called, if by par excellence, analysis. Yet to calculate is not in itself to analyze. A chess player, for example, does the one without effort at the other. It follows that the game of chess and its efforts upon mental character is greatly misunderstood. I am not now writing a treatise, but simply prefacing a somewhat peculiar narrative by observations very much at random. I will, therefore, take occasion to assert that the highest power of the reflective intellect are more decidedly and more usually tasked by the unostentatious game of draughts than by all the elaborate frivolity of chess. In this latter, where the pieces have different and bizarre motions, with variations and variable values. What is only complex is mistaken, a not unusual error for what is profound. Hmm. The attention is here called powerfully into play. If it flagged for an instant, an oversight is committed resulting in injury or defeat. The possible moves being not only manifold, but involute, the chances of such oversights are multiplied, and in 9 cases out of 10, it is the more concentrative rather than the more acute player who conquers. In drafts, on the contrary, where the moves are unique and have but little variation, the probabilities of inadvertence are diminished, and the mere attention being left comparatively unemployed, what advantages are obtained by either party are obtained by superior acumen. To be less abstract, let us suppose a game of drafts where the pieces are reduced to 4 kings, and where, of course, no oversight is to be expected. It is obvious that here the victory can be decided, the players being at all equal, only by some recherche movement, the result of some strong exertion of the intellect. Deprived of ordinary resources, the analyst throws himself into the spirit of his opponent, identifies himself therewith, and not unfrequently sees thus, at a glance, the sole methods, sometimes indeed absurdly simple ones, by which he may seduce into error or hurry into miscalculation. Mm-hmm. Sorry, guys. I am going to open this door. I am dying. Velma, how are you? We now have a dog in the room. So everybody say hey to Velma. Hey, Velma. Aha. Whist has long been noted for its influence upon what is termed the calculating power, and men of the highest order of intellect have been known to take an apparently unaccountable delight in it, while eschewing chess as frivolous. Beyond doubt, there is nothing of a similar nature so greatly tasking the faculty of analysis. The best chess player in Christendom may be little more than the best player of chess, but proficiency in whist implies capacity for success in all those more important undertakings where mind struggles with mind. Now, when I say proficiency, excuse me, I mean that perfection in the game which includes a comprehension of all the sources whence legitimate advantage may be derived. These are not only manifold, but multiform, and lie frequently among recesses of thought altogether inaccessible to the ordinary understanding. To observe it attentively is to remember distinctly, and so far, the concentrative chess player will do very well at whist, while the rules of Hoyle, themselves based upon the mere mechanism of the game, are sufficiently and generally comprehensible. Thus, to have a retentive memory and to proceed by the book are points commonly regarded as the sum total of good playing. But it is in matters beyond the limits of mere rule that the skill of the analyst is evinced. He makes, in silence, a host of observations and inferences. So perhaps do his companions, and the difference in the extent of the information obtained lies not so much in the validity of the inference as in the quality of the observation. Aunt Karen said, hey. She's unimpressed, I'm sorry. She's curled up on the dog bed. I know the beginning is very dry, guys. We're getting there. You're rude, Velma. Do you know that? She knows. Okay. The necessary knowledge is that of what to observe. Our player confines himself not at all, not because the game is the object, does he reject deductions from things external to the game. He examines the countenance of his partner, comparing it carefully with that of each of his opponents. He considers the mode of assorting the cards in each hand, often counting trump by trump and honor by honor, through the glances bestowed by their holders upon each. He notes every variation of face as the play progresses, gathering a fund of thought from the differences in the expression of certainty, of surprise, of triumph, or of chagrin. From the manner of gathering up a trick, he judges whether the person taking it can make another in the suite or suit. I have played cards before. I promise. Taking it can make another in the suit. He recognizes what is played through feint by the air with which it is thrown upon the table. A casual or inadvertent word, the accidental dropping or turning of a card with the accompanying anxiety or carelessness in regard to its concealment. The counting of the tricks, with the order of their arrangement, embarrassment, hesitation, eagerness, or trepidation, all afford, to his apparently intuitive perception, indications of the true state of affairs. The first 2 or 3 rounds having been played, he is in full possession of the contents of each hand, and thenceforth puts down his cards with as absolute a precision of purpose as if the rest of the party had turned outward the faces of their own. Yeah. Yeah, you can probably start to figure out how people sort their hands just by watching them play. The analytical power should not be confounded with ample ingenuity. For while the analyst is necessarily ingenious, the ingenious man is often remarkably incapable of analysis. The construction or combining power by which ingenuity is usually manifested, and to which the phrenologists, I believe erroneously, have assigned a separate organ, supposing it a primitive faculty, has been so frequently seen in those whose intellect bordered otherwise upon idiocy as to have attracted general observation among writers on morals. Between ingenuity and the analytic ability, there exists a difference far greater, indeed, than that between the fancy and the imagination, but of a character very strictly analogous. It will be found, in fact, that the ingenious are always fanciful, and the truly imaginative never otherwise than analytic. I'm going to move you guys closer. I need more light on this book. Ugh. Ooh, maybe. Ooh, baby. You slide over here, and then you slide toward me, and don't spill any wine. There we go. That's better. Okay. The narrative which follows will appear to the reader somewhat in the light of a commentary upon the propositions just advanced. Okay, so we got through the dry. It's all locked in? All right, guy, thanks. Yes, no, maybe so. Okay. Residing in Paris during the spring and part of the summer of 18... I there became acquainted with a Monsieur C. Auguste Dupin. Yes. This young gentleman was an excellent, indeed of an illustrious family, but by a variety of untoward events had been reduced to such poverty that the energy of his character succumbed beneath it, and he ceased to bestir himself in the world, or to care for the retrieval of his fortunes. By courtesy of his creditors, there still remained in his possession a small remnant of his patrimony, and upon the income arising from this, He managed, by means of a rigorous economy, to procure the necessities of life without troubling himself about its superfluities. I hate that word so much. Books, indeed, were his sole luxuries, and in Paris these are easily obtained. Our first meeting was at an obscure library in the Rue Montmartre, where the accident of our both being in search of the same very rare and very remarkable volume brought us into closer communion. We saw each other again and again. I was deeply interested in the little family history which he detailed to me, with all the candor with which a Frenchman indulges whenever mere self is his theme. I was astonished, too, at the vast extent of his reading, and above all, I felt my soul enkindled within me by the wild fervor and the vivid freshness of his imagination. Seeking in Paris the objects I then sought, I felt that the society of such a man would be to me a treasure beyond price, and this feeling I frankly confided to him. It was at length arranged that we should live together during my stay in the city, and as my worldly circumstances were somewhat less embarrassed than his own, I was permitted to be at the expense of renting and furnishing in a style which suited the rather fantastic gloom of our common temper. A time-eaten and grotesque mansion, long deserted through superstitions, into which we did not inquire, and tottering to its fall in a retired and desolate portion of the Faubourg Saint-Germain. Had the routine of our life at this place been known to the world, we should have been regarded as madmen, although, although perhaps as madmen of a harmless nature. Our seclusion was perfect. We admitted no visitors. Indeed, the locality of our retirement had been carefully kept a secret from my own former associates, and it had been many years since Dupin had ceased to know or be known in Paris. We existed within ourselves alone. It was a freak of fancy in my friend, for what else shall I call it? To be enamored of the night for her own sake. And into this bizarrerie, as into all his others, I quietly fell, giving myself up to his wild whims with a perfect abandon. Well, with us always, but we could counterfeit her presence. At the first dawn of the morning, we closed all the messy shutters of our old building, lighting a couple of tapers which, strongly perfumed, threw out only the ghastliest and feeblest of rays. By the aid of these, we then busied our souls in dreams, reading, writing, or conversing, until warned by the clock of the advent of the true darkness. Then we sallied forth into the streets, arm in arm, continuing the topics of the day, or roaming far and wide until a late hour, seeking, amid the wild lights and shadows of the populous city, that infinity of mental excitement which quiet observations can afford. Oh, yes. People watching in Paris at night. Please, please, people watching in Paris at night. Making up stories. Absolutely. At such times, I could not help remarking and admiring, although from his rich ideality I had been prepared to expect it, a peculiar analytic ability in Dupin. He seemed, too, to take an eager delight in its exercise, if not exactly in its display, and did not hesitate to confess the pleasures thus derived. He boasted to me, with a low chuckling laugh, that most men, in respect to himself, wore windows in their bosoms, and was wont to follow up such assertions by direct and very startling proofs of his intimate knowledge of my own. His manner at these moments was frigid and abstract, were vacant in expression, while his voice, usually a rich tenor, sounded petulantly, which would have sounded petulantly, but for the deliberateness and entire distinctness of the enunciation. Observing him in these moods, I often dwelt meditatively upon the old philosophy of the bipart soul, and amused myself with the fancy of a double Dupin, the creative and the resolvent. Let it not be supposed, from what I have just said, that I am derailing any mystery or penning any romance. Oh, detailing any mystery or penning any romance. What I have described in The Frenchman was merely the result of an excited or perhaps of a diseased intelligence. But of the character of his remarks at the periods in question, an example will best convey the idea. Please. Yes, I love an example. We were strolling one night down a long, dirty street in the vicinity of the Palais Royal. Being both apparently occupied with thought, neither one of us had spoken a syllable for 15 minutes at least. All at once, Dupin broke forth with these words. He's a very little fellow, that's true, and would do better for the Théâtre de Variété. There can be no doubt of that, I replied unwittingly, and not at first observing, so much had I been absorbed in reflection, the extraordinary manner in which the speaker had chimed in with my meditations. In an instant afterwards, I recollected myself, and my astonishment was profound. Dupin, I said gravely, this is beyond my comprehension. I do not hesitate to say that I am amazed and can scarcely credit my senses. How is it possible you should know I was thinking of him? Oh, excuse me, of... Here I paused, to ascertain beyond a doubt whether he really knew of whom I thought. Of Chantilly, said he. Why do you pause? You were remarking to yourself that his diminutive figure unfitted him for tragedy. This was precisely what had formed the subject of my reflections. Chantilly was a cobbler of the Rue Saint-Denis, who, becoming stage mad, had attempted the role of Xerxes in Crebillon's tragedy so called, and been notoriously pasquinated for his pains. Tell me, for heaven's sake, I exclaimed, the method, if method there is, by which you have been enabled to fathom my soul in this manner. In fact, I was even more startled than I would have been willing to express. It was the fruiterer, replied my friend, who brought you to the conclusion that the mender of souls was not sufficient height for Xerxes. The fruiterer? You astonish me. I know of no fruiterer whomsoever. The man who ran up against you as we entered the street. It may have been 15 minutes ago. I now remembered that, in fact, a fruiterer, carrying upon his head a large basket of apples, had nearly thrown me down by accident as we passed from the Rue C into the thoroughfare where we stood. But what had this to do with Chantilly, I could not possibly understand. There was not a particle of charlatanerie about Dupin. I will explain, he said, and that you may comprehend all clearly, we will first retrace the course of your meditations, from the moment in which I spoke to you until that of the reconnoitre with the fruiterer in question. The larger links of the chain run thus: Chantilly, Orion, Dr. Nichols, Epicurus, stereotomy, the street stones, the fruiterer. Okay. There are few persons who have not, at some period of their lives, amused themselves in retracing the steps by which particular conclusions of their own minds have been attained. Ooh, do you do that? Okay, so how do I work backwards from what happened? Not like a blaming way, but like in a... Like you just go on one of those days where you don't really have a plan and they're like, how did we end up at this Waffle House 3 hours from home in the middle of the night? Anyway, tangent, back to the story. The occupation is often full of interest, and he who attempts it for the first time is astonished by the apparently eliminable distance and incoherence between the starting point and the goal. What, then, must have been my amazement when I heard the Frenchman speak what he had just spoken, and when I could not help acknowledging that he had spoken the truth. He continued. We had been talking of horses, if I remember aright, just before leaving the Rue C. This was the last subject we discussed. As we crossed into the street, a fruiterer with a large basket upon his head, brushing quickly past us, thrust you onto a pile of paving stones, collected at a spot where the causeway is undergoing repair. You stepped upon one of the loose fragments, slipped, slightly strained your ankle, vexed or sulky, muttered a few words, turned to look at the pile, and then proceeded in silence. I was not particularly attentive to what you did, but observation has become with me of late a species of necessity. Species. You kept your eyes upon the ground, glancing with a petulant expression at the holes and ruts in the pavement, so that I saw you were still thinking of the stones, until we reached a little alley called La Martine, which has been paved, by way of experiment, with the overlapping and riveted blocks. Here your countenance brightened up, and perceiving your lips move, I could not doubt that you murmured the word stereotomy, a term very affectedly applied to this species of pavement. I knew that you could not say to yourself stereotomy without being brought to think of atomies, and thus of the theory of Epicurus. And since, when we discussed this subject not very long ago, I mentioned to you how singularly, yet with how little notice, the vague guesses of that noble Greek had met with confirmation in the late nebular cosmogony, I felt that you could not avoid casting your eyes upward to the great nebula in Orion, and I certainly expected that you would do so. You did look up, and I was now assured that I had correctly followed your steps. In that bitter tirade upon Chantilly, which appeared in yesterday's Musée, the satirist, making some disgraceful allusions to the cobbler's change of name upon assuming the buskin, quoted a Latin line about which we have often conversed. I mean the line, perdidit antiquum litera sonum. I had told you that this was in reference to Orion, formerly written Urion, and from certain pungencies connected with this explanation, I was aware that you could not have forgotten it. It was clear, therefore, that you would not fail to combine the two ideas of Orion and Chantilly. That you did combine them, I saw by the character of the smile which passed over your lips. You thought of the poor cobbler's immolation. So far, you had been stooping in your gait, but now I saw you draw yourself up to your full height. I was then sure that you reflected upon the diminutive figure of Chantilly. At this point, I interrupted your meditations to remark that, as, in fact, he was a very little fellow, that Chantilly, he would do better at the Théâtre des Vérités. Not long after this, looking over an evening edition of the Gazette de Tribunal, when the following paragraphs arrested our attention. Extraordinary murders. This morning, about 3 o'clock, the inhabitants of the Quartier Saint-Roch were aroused from sleep by a succession of terrible shrieks, issuing apparently from the fourth story of a house in the Rue Morgue, known to be the sole occupancy of one Madame L'Espanaye and her daughter Mademoiselle Camille L'Espanaye. Occasioned by a fruitless attempt to procure admission in the usual manner, the gateway was broken in with a crowbar, and 8 or 10 of the neighbors entered accompanied by 2 gendarmes. By this time, the cries had ceased, but as the party rushed up the first flight of stairs, 2 or more rough voices in angry contention were distinguished, and seemed to proceed from the upper part of the house. As the second landing was reached, these sounds also had ceased, and everything remained perfectly quiet. The party spread themselves and hurried from room to room. Upon arriving at a large back chamber in the fourth story, the door of which, being found locked with the key inside, was forced open. A spectacle presented itself which struck everyone present not less with horror than with astonishment. Do you guys remember? Okay. Let's wet our whistles. We're not whistling either. We're not saying we're not whistling. The apartment was in the wildest disorder, the furniture broken and thrown about in all directions. There was only one bedstead, and from this the bed had been removed and thrown into the middle of the floor. On a chair lay a razor, besmeared with blood. On the hearth were 2 or 3 long and thick tresses of gray human hair, also dabbled in blood, and seeming to... Upon the floor were found 4 Napoleons, an earring of topaz, 3 large silver spoons, 3 smaller of metal d'Alger, and 2 bags containing nearly 4,000 francs in gold. The drawers of a bureau, which stood in one corner, were open and had been apparently rifled, although many articles still remained in them. A small iron safe was discovered under the bed, not under the bedstead. It was open, with the key still in the door. It had no contents beyond a few old letters, and other papers of little consequence. Of Madame L'Espanaye, no traces were here to be seen, but an unusual quantity of soot being observed in the fireplace, and horrible to relate, the corpse of the daughter, head downward, was dragged therefrom, it having been thus forced up the narrow aperture for a considerable distance. The body was quite warm. Upon examining it, many excoriations were perceived, no doubt occasioned by the violence with which it had been thrust up and disengaged. Upon the face were many severe scratches, and upon the throat dark bruises and deep indentations of fingernails, as if the deceased had been throttled to death. After a thorough investigation of every portion of the house, without further discovery, the party made its way into a small paved yard in the rear of the building, where lay the corpse of the old lady, with her throat so entirely cut that, upon an attempt to raise her, the head fell off. The body, as well as the head, was fearfully mutilated, the former so much so as scarcely retain any semblance of humanity. To this horrible mystery there is not as yet, we believe, the slightest clue. The next day's paper had these additional particulars. The tragedy in the Rue Morgue. Many individuals have been examined in relation to this most extraordinary and frightful affair. The word affair has not yet in France that levity of import with which it conveys with us. But nothing whatever has transpired to throw light upon it. We give below all the material testimony elicited. Okay, so they're giving Dupin a list of stuff to study and analyze. That's so good. Pauline Doberg, laundress, deposes that she has known both the deceased for 3 years, washed for them during that period. The old lady and her daughter seemed on good terms, very affectionate toward each other. They were excellent pay, could not speak in regard to their mode or means of living, believed that Madame told fortunes for a living, was reputed to have money put by, never met any persons in the house when she called for the clothes or took them home, was sure that had no servant in employ. There appeared to be no furniture in any part of the building except in the 4th story. He's fine. Pierre Moreau, tobacconist, deposes that he has been in the habit of selling small quantities of tobacco and snuff to Madame L'Espanaye for nearly 4 years, was born in the neighborhood, and has always resided there. The deceased and her daughter had occupied the house in which the corpses were found for more than 6 years. It was formerly occupied by a jeweler who underlet the upper rooms to various persons. The house was the property of Madame L. She became dissatisfied with the abuse of the premises by her tenant and was moved into them herself, refusing to let any portion. The old lady was childish. Witness had seen the daughter some 5 or 6 times during the 6 years. The two lived an exceedingly retired life, were reputed to have money. The two lived an sorry, ADD, distraction. Squirrel! Leonard, I know, but please stop, okay? Thank you, I love you. Had heard it said among the neighbors that Madame L. told fortunes, did not believe it. Had never seen any person enter the door except the old lady and her daughter, a porter once or twice, and a physician some 8 or 10 times. Many other persons, neighbors, gave evidence to the same effect. No one was spoken of as frequenting the house. It was not known whether there were any living connections of Madame L. and her daughter. The shutters of the front windows were seldom opened. Those in the rear were always closed, with the exception of the large back room, 4th story. The house was a good house, not very old. Isidore Musset, gendarme, deposes that he was called to the house about 3 o'clock in the morning and found some 20 or 30 persons at the gateway endeavoring to gain admittance. Forced it open at length with a bayonet, not with a crowbar. Had but little difficulty in getting it open on account of its being a double or folding gate, and bolted neither at top nor bottom. The shrieks were continued until the gate was forced, and then suddenly ceased. They seemed to be screams of some person or persons in great agony, were loud and drawn out, not short and quick. Witness led the way upstairs. Upon reaching the first landing, heard 2 voices in loud and angry contention. The one a gruff voice, the other much shriller, a very strange voice. Could distinguish some words of the former, which was that of a Frenchman. Was positive that it was not a woman's voice. Could distinguish the words sacre and diable. The shrill voice was that of a foreigner. Could not be sure whether it was the voice of a man or of a woman. Could not make out what was said, but believed the language to be Spanish. The state of the room and of the bodies was described by this witness as we described them yesterday. Henri Duval, a neighbor, and by trade a silversmith, deposes that he was one of the party who first entered the house. Corroborates the testimony of Musette in general. As soon as they forced an entrance, they reclosed the door to keep out the crowd, which collected very fast, notwithstanding the lateness of the hour. The shrill voice, this witness thinks, was that of an Italian, was certain it was not French. Could not be sure that it was a man's voice. It might have been a woman's. Was not acquainted with the Italian language, could not distinguish the words, but was convinced by the intonation that the speaker was an Italian. Knew Madame L. and her daughter, had conversed with both frequently, was sure that the shrill voice was not that of either of the deceased. Monsieur Odenheimer, restaurateur. This witness volunteered his testimony. Not speaking French, was examined through an interpreter. Is a native of Amsterdam. Was passing the house at the time of the shrieks. They lasted for several minutes, probably 10. They were long and loud, very awful and distressing. Was one of those who entered the building. Corroborated the previous evidence in every respect but one. was sure that the shrill voice was that of a man, of a Frenchman. Could not distinguish the words uttered. They were loud and quick, unequal, spoken apparently in fear as well as in anger. The voice was harsh, not so much shrill as harsh. Could not call it a shrill voice. The gruff voice said repeatedly, Sacre, diable, and once, Mon Dieu. That's my favorite thing to say. Oh, mon Dieu. Jules Mignon, banker of the firm of Mignon et Fils, Rue de Lorraine, is the elder Mignon. Madame L'Espagne had some property, had opened an account with his banking house in the spring of the year 8 years previously, made frequent deposits in small sums, had checked for nothing until the third day before her death, when she took out in person the sum of 4,000 francs. This sum was paid in gold, and the clerk went home with the money. Adolphe Lebon, clerk to Mignon des Filles, deposes that on the day in question, about noon, he accompanied Madame L'Espagne to her residence with the 4,000 francs put up in 2 bags. Upon the door being opened, Mademoiselle L. appeared and took from his hands one of the bags, while the old lady relieved him of the other. He then bowed and departed. Oh my gosh, we have so many people. I forgot how long. That's what makes this story so long. Okay. I know, but it does come into play. Did not see any persons in the street at the time. It is a by street, very lonely. William Bird, tailor, deposes that he was one of the party who entered the house, is an Englishman, has lived in Paris 2 years, was one of the first to ascend the stairs, heard the voices in contention. The gruff voice was that of a Frenchman, could make out several words, but cannot now remember all. Heard distinctly Sacre and Mon Dieu. There was a sound at the moment as if of several persons struggling, a scraping and scuffling sound. The shrill voice was very loud, louder than the gruff one. Is sure that it was not the voice of an Englishman. Appeared to be that of a German. Might have been a woman's voice. Does not understand German. Four of the above-named witnesses, being recalled, deposed that the door of the chamber in which was found the body of Mademoiselle was locked on the inside when the party reached it. Everything was perfectly silent. No groans or noises of any kind. Upon forcing the door, no person was seen. The windows, both of the back and front room, were down and firmly fastened from within. A door between the 2 rooms was closed, but not locked. The door leading from the front room into the passage was locked with the key on the inside. A small room in the front of the house, on the 4th story, at the head of the passage, was open, the door being ajar. This room was crowded with old beds, boxes, and so forth. These were carefully removed and searched. There was not an inch of any portion of the house which was not carefully searched. Sweeps were sent up and down the chimneys. The house was a 4-story one with garrets. A trap door on the roof was nailed down very securely. It did not appear to have been opened for years. The time elapsing between the hearing of the voices in contention and the breaking open of the room door was variously stated by the witnesses. Some made it as short as 3 minutes, some as long as 5. The door was opened with difficulty. Alfonso Garcia, undertaker, deposes that he resides in the Rue Morgue, is a native of Spain, was one of the party who entered the house, did not proceed upstairs. He'd have to later anyway. Is nervous and was apprehensive of the consequences of agitation. Heard the voices in contention. The gruff voice was that of a Frenchman. Could not distinguish what was said. The shrill voice was that of an Englishman, is sure of this. Does not understand the English language, but judges by the intonation. Alberto Montani, confectioner, deposes that he was among the first to ascend the stairs. Heard the voices in question. The gruff voice was that of a Frenchman, distinguished several words. The speaker appeared to be expostulating. Could not make out the words of the shrill voice, spoke quick and unevenly. Thinks it is the voice of a Russian. Corroborates the general testimony. Is an Italian. Never conversed with a native of Russia. I love that they are all just like guessing languages that they don't know. It sounded like it could be that. It's fine. Several witnesses, recalled, here testified that the chimney of all the rooms on the fourth story was too narrow to admit the passage of a human being. By sweeps were meant cylindrical sweeping brushes, such as employed by those who clean chimneys. These brushes were passed up and down every flue in the house. There was no back passage by which anyone could have descended while the party proceeded upstairs. The body of Mademoiselle was so firmly wedged in the chimney that it could not be got down until 4 or 5 of the party united their strength. Oh, Paul Dumas, physician. Oh, I am so sorry. Deposes that he was called upon to view the bodies about daybreak. They were both then lying on the sacking of the bedstead in the chamber where Mademoiselle was found. The corpse of the young lady was much bruised and excoriated. The fact that it had been thrust up the chimney would sufficiently account for those appearances. The throat was greatly chafed. There were several deep scratches just below the chin, altogether with a series of livid spots, which were evidently the impression of fingers. The face was fearfully discolored, and the eyeballs protruded. Oh, excuse me, guys. Oh, my heavens. The tongue had been partially bitten through. A large bruise was discovered upon the pit of the stomach, produced apparently by the pressure of a knee. In the opinion of Monsieur Dumas, Mademoiselle d'Espagny had been throttled to death by some person or persons unknown. The corpse of the mother was horribly mutilated. All the bones of the right leg and arm were more or less shattered. The left tibia much splintered, as well as all the ribs on the left side. Whole body dreadfully bruised and discolored. It was not possible to say how the injuries had been inflicted. A heavy club of wood, or a broad bar of iron, a chair, any large, heavy, or obtuse weapon would have produced such results if wielded by the hands of a very powerful man. No woman could have inflicted the blows with any weapon. The head of the deceased, when seen by witnesses, was entirely separated from the body and was also greatly shattered. The throat had evidently been cut with some very sharp instrument, probably with the razor. Alexandre Etienne, surgeon, was called with Monsieur Dumas to view the bodies, corroborated the testimony and the opinions of Monsieur Dumas. Nothing farther of importance was elicited, although several other persons were examined. A murder so mysterious and so perplexing in all its particulars was never before committed in Paris, if indeed a murder has been committed at all. The police are entirely at fault, an unusual occurrence in affairs of this nature. There is not, however, the shadow of a clue apparent. The evening edition of the paper stated that the greatest excitement still continued in the Quartier Saint-Roch, that the premises in question had been carefully researched, and fresh examinations of witnesses instituted, but all to no purpose. A postscript, however, mentioned that Adolphe Lebon had been arrested and imprisoned, although nothing appeared to criminate him beyond the facts already detailed. Dupin seemed singularly interested in the progress of this affair, at least so I judged from his manner, for he made no comments. It was only after the announcements that Laban had been imprisoned that he asked me my opinion respecting the murders. I could merely agree with all Paris in considering them an insolvable mystery. I saw no means by which it would be possible to trace the murderer. We must not judge the means, said Dupin, but this shell of an examination. The Parisian police, so much extolled for acumen, are cunning, but no more. There's no method in their proceedings beyond the method of the moment. They make a vast parade of measures, but not unfrequently they are so ill adapted to the objects proposed as to put us in the mind of Monsieur Jourdain's calling for his robe de chambre, pour mieux extendre la musique. The results attained by them are not unfrequently surprising, but for the most part are brought about by simple diligence and activity. When these qualities are unavailing, their schemes fail. Vidocq, for example, was a good guesser and a persevering man, but without educated thought. He erred continually by the very intensity of his investigations. He impaired his vision by holding the object too close. He might see perhaps one or two points with unusual clearness, but in so doing, he necessarily lost sight of the matter as a whole. Thus, there is such a thing as being too profound. Truth is not always in a well. In fact, as regards the more important knowledge, I do believe that she is invariably superficial. The depth lies in the valleys where we seek her, and not upon the mountain tops where she is found. The modes and sources of this kind of error are well typified in the contemplation of the heavenly bodies. To look at a star by glance, to view it in a sidelong way. Okay, well, just get settled. Ah. Oh, okay, okay. You got to pick a spot, Bubba. Okay, I love you. You're going to kill me. Thank you. The modes and sources of this kind of error are well typified in the contemplation of the heavenly bodies. To look at a star by glances, to view it in a sidelong way, by turning toward it in the exterior portions of the retina, more susceptible of feeble impressions of light than the interior, is to behold the star distinctly, is to have the best appreciation of its luster, a luster which grows dim just in proportion as we turn our vision fully upon it. Ugh. A greater number of rays actually fall upon the eye in the latter case, but in the former, there's the more refined capacity for comprehension. Cat here. By undue profundity, we perplex and enfeeble thought, and it is possible to make even Venus herself vanish from the firmament by a scrutiny too sustained, too concentrated, or too direct. As for these murders, let us enter into some examinations for ourselves before we make up an opinion respecting them. An inquiry will afford us amusement. I thought this an odd term, so applied, but said nothing. And besides, Laban once rendered me a service for which I am not ungrateful. We will go and see the premises with our own eyes. I know G, the prefect of police, and shall have no difficulty in obtaining the necessary permission. Okay. I think that is where we will leave it for tonight. So, we've been together for an hour. So, next week, we will read about their examination and the conclusions that they come to, and then the actual resolution of our story. So thank you guys for being with me again. Dad, you have a week to help me find that song. I'm going to learn it. Who knows? If I'm prepared, I might sing. I'll probably sing. You want to sing with me? You want to sing with me? It was, okay. Working 9 to 5 for a man whose eye is creepy. Gonna take his life. Gonna find him when he's sleepy. Oh. Oh, I gotta find the rest of it. I gotta find the rest of it because it was great. Yeah, it'll be there. I'll find it. I'll find it. But thank you guys so much for being with me tonight. Tomorrow night on the second channel is our Reddit stories, and they are going to be so fun. I love being able to be a little snarky. I'm probably going to start being a little bit snarkier. Just being real honest. I've been nervous the last couple of weeks. And then tomorrow night at 9, we've got the Cozy Coven. If you're in Dayton this weekend and the snow doesn't hit too hard, there is a benefit for Jeff Newell, who is just a great guy, and he's a music guy, and yeah, he supports a lot of the live musicians. He can probably fix anything that is amplifier related or music related or whatever's. So we'll have that benefit Saturday night. I'm hoping I'm going to be there, but if we have a lot of snow, I'm not going to drive that hour and a half. But I will send my support to them. I think I've got it on my events on Facebook, so you guys can check it out if you want to make donations and whatnot. Also, check out links for the shirt, the mug. If there's going to be a new, I think there's going to be a new one for February. But I will keep you guys posted on all of that. And I hope that if you have not yet, you will go and like and share and subscribe and share and share and share and share. And please share. And then share. And then if you can share one more time, it's free for you. It's free for you. And what is the worst thing that happens? We have a bunch more people here on Wednesday nights. I'm okay with that. I'd love to have a bunch more people here on Friday or Wednesday nights and on Thursday nights and any other night that we decide to add, because Heidi and I will have the Cookie Jar podcast at some point too. So yeah, we got to get those subscriber numbers up. So all of these hours that I am putting in start counting beyond just us having a great time and me getting to just hang out with my family once a week or twice a week. So I love you guys. I will see you next week, or I will see you tomorrow, or I'll see you this weekend, or you can stop at my house. I am not entirely too cute. You are entirely too cute, and I love you so much, my little sister. And Leonard, say goodbye. Oh, say goodbye. Goodbye, guys. Say thanks for being here. Don't bite me. Say thank you. No, don't bite me. No. No, we love the mom or the nana. We love the nana. Say bye, guys. Say bye. Bye. Oh, bye.